The loop of not knowing. Why psychological education is the only way out. Survivors of narcissistic abuse rarely begin their journey with psychological insight. We are not trained in object relations. We don't know what a narcissistic structure is. At best, we've picked up fragments from popular culture, memes, and slogans that reduce narcissism to selfishness or arrogance. But this is not the reality we live through. The narcissist we encountered was often loving, charismatic, wounded. What we experienced cannot be captured by caricature. We were not abused by ego, we were abused by structure, and that structure only becomes clear after collapse. Because in most cases, we don't even realize we've been narcissistically abused until our mental health breaks. Collapse is often the only signal we get. The anxiety, the depersonalization, the loss of sleep, the inner looping, the obsessive thinking, the apathy, the inability to feel pleasure. These are the aftershocks of being psychically rewritten by another's internal object world. So, how do we fix what we do not understand? The threshold of education, entering the labyrinth. The survivor must walk the path of willed unknowing. You cannot recover by reinforcing what you think you know, especially not if those concepts have been formed by trauma patterning, social media distortions, or short form cathartic narratives. You must go deeper than the abuse itself. This means sitting with the discomfort of not understanding, the cognitive dissonance of seeing yourself in both the victim and the narcissist, the slow dawning that your healing may be a form of grandiose performance, the unbearable truth that your identity may have been constructed within their gaze, not your own. This is where the journey really begins, at the death of the false clarity. And it is here we encounter cathexis. Cathexis, the narcissist energetic imprint. Professor Sam Vaknin teaches that narcissists relate not to people, but to internal snapshots. These snapshots are idealized, frozen, and libidinally charged. This is cathexis, the investment of psychic energy into an object. In the shared fantasy, the narcissist hypercathex to the new supply. You become their dream self object, their mirror. But the cathexis isn't about you. It's about the narcissist's internal blueprint projected outward. And the moment you deviate from it, the moment you become real, that energy collapses. It is withdrawn. The resulting absence feels like annihilation. But it is not just the loss of them you feel, it is the loss of your own self structure, which had become entangled with their gaze. What you're experiencing is a psychic orbital collapse, not of your own making, but enacted within your internal world through introject, co option, and mirrored identification. The false self of the survivor. MPIT teaches that survivors of narcissistic abuse often build a false survivor identity during collapse. This false self is not narcissistic in intent, but it is narcissistic in structure. It forms in the absence of a regulated anticipatory stress reflex and is governed instead by the looping distortions of the anticipatory shadow reflex. This false structure seeks external validation, feeds on explanation without integration, fixates on justice or exposure as a proxy for authorship, turns pain into performance, and often over identifies with victimhood as a stabilizing role. This is not a moral failure, It is a survival adaptation, but it must be seen clearly. Because if we stay in that place, consuming content that validates the loop but never breaks it, we become co authors of our own inversion. The educational betrayal. When recovery spaces mirror the abuse, many survivors enter healing spaces expecting education and instead receive containment without truth. Emotional relief is prioritized over structural insight. This is not healing, it is mirrored misattunement. When content creators, therapists, or support systems reduce narcissistic abuse to selfishness, red flags, or unintegrated personal narrative, they risk reactivating the same pattern of object distortion that caused the collapse in the first place. Survivors need more than comfort. They need to be confronted with complexity, challenged to see the disorder in structural terms, educated on cathexis, introjection, shared fantasy, and symbolic fracture, walked towards the organizing gate, the point of psychic collapse and inversion, and shown how to reverse the trajectory. This is not easy, but it is the only path to authorship. The paradox, escaping the loop from within the loop. Here lies the central MPIT paradox. To escape the false self, you must use the false self. You must watch content that challenges the very structure you are using to engage with it. Sit still while your own loop mimics your abusers. Reach for knowledge while being suspicious of your own motives. Speak from inside the collapse and still reach out. This is not madness, this is inversion, and this is where true psychological education begins, not with certainty, but with the courage to deconstruct what we mistook for clarity. Entry is annihilation, exit is authorship. The moment you were idealized was the moment you were already on the path to annihilation. This was not your fault. It was the blueprint of the shared fantasy. And as Sam Vaknin so precisely maps, the narcissist does not seek love. They seek energetic completion through object control. You were never meant to survive that fantasy, but you can survive it now by stepping back from the fantasy altogether, not by fighting them, not by proving your worth, not by staying inside the dream, hoping to awaken them, but becoming the author of the mirror itself. Because the loop is not who you are, it is what was done to you. And now it is time to speak from beyond it. This is the work. This is the map. This is MPIT. Peace out. Loads of love.